Okay, back to this Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman trial verdict. All the fallout that's come afterwards, and I'm really looking forward to shifting from the Trayvon Martin trial itself um, and to larger issues. And so I'm not going to deal with the racist reactions that I've gotten to my personal videos on the Zimmerman verdict and the Zimmerman affair. I've had people say about how Trayvon Martin got what he deserved. One guy reacted and told me that I lost. And just if you don't believe me, you can check out the comments to some of those videos and just see for yourself some of the just visceral reactions to the videos that had nothing to do with anything. But what bothers me is I don't hear anyone talking really about the gravity of the piss poor case that the prosecution put together. We speculate about the prosecution, not making its arguments or so on and so forth. And don't get me wrong, based upon the case that the prosecution presented, I don't see how you could have convicted George Zimmerman. The case was horrible. I could have tried that. I'm not a lawyer. As a priest, I could have tried that case and gotten a better verdict than what the prosecution got. And for me, it just begs the question as to whether or not the prosecution even wanted a conviction. I don't think they did. I honestly don't think they did. I don't hear many people in the mainstream media saying that, calling a spade a spade. I hear people appeasing, and even the lawyers for Trayvon Martin's parents and Trayvon Martin's parents. I know that everybody has to be politically correct, I guess, but I'm going to call a spade a spade. I don't think they wanted to convict George Zimmerman. Look at it this way. It was weeks, if not months, before Zimmerman was even arrested and charged. And then they had to appoint a special prosecutor to do so, Ms. Angela Corey, who, by the way, is up for re-election in 2016. And you got to think that this all has some bearing on the case that was put together. There were countless witnesses testifying about George Zimmerman being a good guy and this and that and the third. And there were no character witnesses besides Trayvon Martin's parents and his brother testifying about the character of Trayvon Martin, what type of person he was. And it seems to me that you would know that that's the prosecution, the defense's angle is to prove that Zimmerman was a good guy. And also that the defense is also trying to bring into the discussion this whole idea that Trayvon Martin is a thug because he smokes marijuana or he had a picture with a gun or something like that. So now he's this hardened criminal. And they just painted this picture of Trayvon being a bad person, whereas no one did anything to paint the picture about George Zimmerman. Trayvon Martin was a kid. Okay, he might have smoked marijuana. Okay, he did smoke marijuana. Come on. How many kids do we know that have smoked marijuana before? So that's not out of the norm. How many kids do you know that might see a gun and think it's cool and want to take a picture with it? Does that prove that somebody is a thug? But for some reason, those things were used to paint a picture that Trayvon Martin was a thug. Meanwhile, George Zimmerman, it comes out that George Zimmerman has a cousin or something that says that he molested her for 10 years. He has a restraining order for domestic violence from his ex, and that they say that he was arrested back in 2005 for resisting arrest, violently resisting arrest. But for some reason, the defense was able to show that this was irrelevant, and the prosecution did not argue that it was relevant, and so this was never brought into the discussion. Meanwhile, Trayvon Martin's identity is all shattered by things that are completely irrelevant to the case. Again, I do not think the prosecution wanted a conviction. So what happened, in my opinion. In my opinion, you had all of these protests going on in Sanford, Florida, and they had to do something because the powers that be were like, okay, these are peaceful protests now, but you know how they think that black people can always riot, the same way they were preparing us for riots after the Zimmerman trial. I mean, before the trial was even done, they started preparing folks for riots and talking about, oh, come out and be peaceful. And then you got these lamb chop sing-along Negro leaders coming out preparing people to not riot, like that's the only response black people know how to do is riot. But we had all of these peaceful protests going on in Sanford, Florida after George Zimmerman killed Trayvon Martin. And the powers that be were like, well, I guess we have to do something. Because if we continue to not arrest him, if we don't arrest him, these peaceful protests might turn into something a little more unpeaceful. And so they were like, okay, we'll appoint this woman in here, Angela Corey in here, and we'll make her the prosecutor, and she'll press charges, and we'll appease the masses, we'll appease the people that want justice, black and white and Hispanic and Jewish and everybody that wants justice. We'll appease them by throwing this heavy charge at him. We're going to charge him with second-degree murder and just show everybody that we're, quote-unquote, serious about bringing justice. But come on, man, that's just a complete sham. I mean, there was no intention to bring justice for this situation. Just look at the case that was presented. It was ridiculous. It was completely, as Stephen A. Smith would say, it was ASA 9, ASA 10, ASA 11, and ASA 12. I wish I had them with me right now to talk about this. But there was no intention, in my opinion, for Zimmerman to be brought to justice. And then you got all these reactions talking about, oh, you know, Trayvon Martin got what he deserved. And I'm like, come on. But don't get me wrong. We can't do anything. There's not much that we can do about people's individual prejudices. The beautiful thing about America is that you have the right to be prejudiced if you want to. I have the right to be prejudiced if I want to. Our personal prejudices, you can't legislate. But what can be done is institutionalized prejudice. I mean, come on. But, you know, they get away with it because lamb chop sing-along Negroes come around and do nothing. I mean, they had all these protests before the charges were filed against Zimmerman, and once the charges were filed, everybody backs off and is like, okay, now we trust the system to do what it's supposed to do. So the system that didn't even want to arrest George Zimmerman in the first place, we now trust them to put together a responsible trial to actually convict the man that they never wanted to charge in the first place. So we lay back. We don't do anything. We watch the trial unfold. We trust the man to do what they're supposed to do. And then when it doesn't happen, now reactionary Negro organizations want to come out and say, oh, sign a petition for this, sign a petition for that. Now that everything is said and done, it's, oh, let's do this, oh, let's do that. And when you talk to them about doing something more than just, you know, going out and marching and we shall overcoming it up, when you talk to folks about, you know, actually maybe doing ballot initiatives to remove stand your ground laws from the books, or sitting in at representatives' offices to demand that they bring a bill to the floor to remove those legislations, or anything like that, they say, oh, you too radical. So what in the world is the point? Just so that we can have these quote-unquote discussions about race and keep putting money in people's pockets because we have all of these luminaries and civil rights legends or whatever who want to still earn their living by talking about the problem that they continue to perpetuate. No one wants to solve the problem. And that's the frustrating thing for me, because the beautiful thing about democracy is that we're supposed to be able to solve these problems. And now that we are free, now that we have the right to vote, now that we can petition and so on and so forth, and we have elected members of Congress, we're supposed to be able to overcome. We should have been done overcome. But for some reason, we still seeing the same things going on, and now we have case after case of quote-unquote stand your ground with ridiculous crap going on, where now we have in Jacksonville this man done shot and killed somebody, a little boy, a little 13-year-old boy, because his music was too loud, and now he's saying, oh, I was standing my ground. And so I can see it now. O'Mara, the attorney for Zimmerman, is going to go and be his defense attorney, and they're going to come and they're going to lay forth this case, and the state prosecutor is going to put together some BS response to the case, and Lord have mercy, Dunn is going to be found innocent too, or they're going to say that they couldn't prove that it was first-degree murder, that something, I don't know. But I'm tired of people of conscience just sitting around waiting for justice to be done, for it to just come out of thin air from somewhere, and we turn and we say, oh, all we can do is pray, and all we can do is look to God for help. And I mean, yeah, I'm a priest and I preach about the gospel of Christ, but come on, God gives us his grace, God gives us his power, God gives us the means by which we are to enact ourselves and live faithful lives that bring justice down like water. We're supposed to do that. We are his hands, his eyes, his feet, his body. We got to be more. We got to demand more from ourselves, from society, than what we're being given. Brothers and sisters, let this be a clarion call, please, that people of conscience, that people who love justice wouldn't be able to say, oh, this is black or this is white, but this is a human issue. And that whether we're black, whether we're white, whether we're Asian, Hispanic, whatever, that humanely, we would be able to say, this should not be so in a civilized society. Beloved, let us respond in ways that bring justice, not just for one individual, but for society. And may God bless us in our endeavors. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen.